Hey everyone, welcome to Sunday Sunday. We are missing half of the crew, half of the nest, half of the tribe tonight, but we still want to have a really good conversation about dating somebody who has a best friend or a really good friend of the opposite sex. And so this is going to be part one because we also want to include the rest of the ladies in part two, and maybe even we'll have a guest. We'll see. So here was a topic that was suggested by somebody, a man on Instagram, and he said, can men and women be best friends if they're both in a relationship? So what are your thoughts on that before I tell you mine?
That's actually a good question. I'm curious who sent you that.
Just somebody on Instagram. But I will say that I texted it to a couple of my male friends that I made after my divorce, mind you. So if you think about that, where I kind of stand on that.
I don't see a problem. Honestly speaking, you can be friends with an opposite sex even if you're in a relationship, as long as you know how to set healthy boundaries, how to be emotionally honest, and have a clear intention and communicate effectively. If you can do that, why not? I think it's...
I know you have a male friend who is married, and you guys have been friends for many years.
Yes.
And I just wonder, can a man really be friends with a beautiful woman and not be sexually attracted to her?
I think yes. I think so. I have a couple of male friends that are friends my husband has met. And so I find myself to be beautiful and we're friends. And there's no attraction there. So one of them I've been friends with since teenage, and he's like a brother. And I do think that there needs to be, like Minu said, clear boundaries and mindfulness of the other party who is not, like mindful of the person that you're dating and their feelings. I think that needs to be a mindful thought process.
So I sent this topic to a couple of some men, and one person says it depends on several factors, and I'm going to read this from my phone. Maturity of the partner is a big one, and history of the friendship is as well. And I said, can men turn off their sexual desires for a female friend? Is it nature versus maturity? I can be mature all I want. I have actually fallen for, no, I don't even know if I want to say fallen for, but I have been very attracted to a married man before. I couldn't help that attraction. I was so attracted to his mind. It later turned into being attracted to who he was physically, even though I knew he was off limits. Because I won't go there. I don't touch married men. I don't mess around with married men. So you have this natural desire to want somebody. Your mature side says you can't. Can you really turn off the nature part of that? And so that's kind of like my question. I will say that when I was most recently married, I think the only male person I ever talked to at maybe great lengths was a coworker of mine. And that's it. I don't really have male friends, but I've started to have male friends now. And yeah, I kind of see it. I still see it the same. And one of my relationships before, he had female friends. But where is the line on conversations that you have? Do you call your female friends and talk about your current partner in a negative light? Where are the boundaries? Who sets those boundaries? I shouldn't set those boundaries for you. You should know that you shouldn't be talking about me to another woman, because I would never do that to my partner. So I guess that piece would be the immaturity part. I don't
Very
know.
well said, Shannon, but that's where the boundaries and communication, come in place. So when you're talking to your partner or husband, you have clear communication and boundaries. Friendships can be healthy. But if you're downplaying, or if you're defending constantly, or if you're trying to hide something, now that's a problem.
Right.
As long as if say, for example, you're talking to your male friend and your partner comes and sits with you and you decide to walk away. Now that creates a doubt. What are you trying to hide? Right?
Right.
So as long as you can feel absolutely comfortable in your skin and continue talking to your friend. And I don't see anything wrong. Like I have a married friend who I've known for more than 20 years. He and I talk pretty much every second day for hours. His wife is walking around, she says hi, sometimes she sits and have conversations with us, sometimes she just let us be us, because we have a history together. We have so many memories. So honestly, it all depends on how you set up boundaries, how you communicate with your partner as well as your friend, and just be respectful. As long as you are an effective communicator, you know how to set boundaries, I don't see any problem. But if you're hiding, now that's a problem.
And also what I don't like, and thank you, Minu, but I just want to point something out. Oftentimes I hear, well, she is insecure or he is insecure. And for me, it has nothing to do with about insecurity. It has to do with respect. Because you're right. If you're getting off the phone or if you're sneaking phone calls and your phone calls are only in the car with your female friend, that's a problem. So I recently met somebody and he has 2 female best friends. And I told him, I said, look, let's just be friends. So we've decided to just be in the friend zone. But recently I kind of was explaining to him, I was like, look, if you get a phone call from your female best friend at 2:00 in the morning and my husband is holding me and we're cuddling and you get up in the middle of the night to attend to your female friend, that's a problem. I'm not going to like that at all. And you know what he said? He goes, if it's that important that I need to leave my wife, you're coming with me. So that kind of changed my thought process because I need to be a priority. And I didn't think of it that way. And I kind of put him in the friend zone because of my closed-minded thought. But now that I think about it, I can deal with that as long as there's boundaries on conversations too. Like, don't be talking mess about me, the things that you don't like to your female friends. Come talk to me. Tell me what's the problem here? How can we rectify this? How can we fix this? Let's communicate. Those are the problems because I have had this in the past. One of my exes had a female best friend and he would literally be on the phone with her talking bad stuff about me. And we're married. That's unacceptable behavior.
See, now that's where boundary comes in plays. Honestly speaking, here I feel friendship is not an issue. Replacement is. It is not that men and women can be friends. It's about what role is the person playing in your emotional life.
Wow. That's very well said, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's see. What else? What other responses did I get when I shot this out to my male friends? One person said, I don't like to paint everything with a broad brush, so I say it depends. He says, I know that's a cop-out, but it's true. He says he has some beautiful platonic friends that he truly values, but never has he had an ex. I could never introduce them to this. He was dating before. He couldn't introduce his female friends to an ex because, again, she was insecure. And he said there's beautiful people all over the world. So going back to kind of insecurity, you do have beautiful friends, you have beautiful strangers, and I guess he just kind of throws that under the same kind of umbrella, having that self-control. So, and if you value the friendship, then you wouldn't be doing anything sexual with them in the first place. And that's true.
I think that's a big point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have just kind of, I'll just tell you in the past, I just haven't had male friends. Everything that I need from a friend, I get from you guys. There's nothing it doesn't require a maturity level. It doesn't require conversations to be secret. It doesn't require any of that. Everything that I need from a friend, I have in this group, even the ones that aren't here. I don't need a male friend. But I can understand if you came into a relationship with a male friend. I get that. But for me, I don't need it. Now, to say if I did have a male friend and then I started dating somebody, I would probably not let go of that male friend because I'm starting to date somebody new. And that was my issue. I would never tell a man, you have to let go of your female best friend if you want to be with me. That's not okay either. So I just decided I don't want to date somebody who has a female best friend, especially someone they were once intimate with. So
if intimacy is involved, then, then there's that emotional boundaries have already been broken. And so it's hard to recover from that. It's hard to separate that. I was reminded of what was that movie where they were best friends? It was with Shania Latham and
Oh, Love and Basketball.
was it was it Love and Basketball? It was Love and
They were
Basketball.
neighbors. Yeah.
And so, well, no, there was another one when it was her. Was it Brown Sugar? Is that what that
Mm,
was?
hmm
And they were
I think
best
so.
friends and he got married and like I don't know. I personally myself, I don't feel comfortable with my husband having a lot of female friends because I feel like it's not an insecure thing. I feel like when a door is open, the enemy can try to play in that area. And, I have been presented where women have just been disrespectful for no reason at all. And there's claimed to be a friend or, they've hung out for years or whatever. Well, if you disrespect me and you openly disrespect me, I really don't appreciate that friendship. And I don't think that that friendship should be allowed. So I personally do not like the close best friend friendship. I said I have male friends earlier and I would never I love my friend, one of my friends. I love him like a brother, I said. But there's boundaries and there's a respect for his wife, number 1, and a respect for myself, but definitely respect for his wife. I wouldn't want to intrude in any way to make her feel uncomfortable. So there's a place that I sit. I feel like I know my place. I wouldn't want to cross that boundary ever, but I know that there are people out there that are willing to cross that boundary and not even think twice about it.
Mm. So if you're, I don't even know if I should ask this. Maybe Minu can answer this because it would be a hypothetical for Minu more so because she's not married. Minu, if you
Yes.
got married and your husband said, if we're going to be married, or once you got married, you can no longer be friends with that person that you've been friends with for 30 years, what would your response be?
I will not get married.
What if you were already married and he put those parameters on during the marriage?
No, I'm going to have a very clear communication before I get married.
Well,
He needs to know what my life is. I need to know what his life is. And then, you talk maturely. That's where communication comes and plays. As long as you can manage your communication, you have the integrity, you are honest, you are authentic, and you know how to set healthy boundaries. I do not see a problem. But if you just, as it's not a switch that turns on and off that now you're married, so you'll control me. That
mm.
doesn't work like that. If you are going to have that power and control over me just because you are now entitled to be my husband, I can do the same as a wife. And where are we heading towards then? We are already setting ourselves up for failure.
And that's a great conversation to have, even at the dating stage. Like I said, I had asked him who the question that came up was, who are your best friends and why are they your best friends? And that's when he proceeded to tell me that his best friends were women. And I just think those are really good conversations to have when you're starting to get out there and start dating before you get married. And I like your response that you wouldn't marry him. Like it wouldn't even get to the point to where he sprung that up on you when you were already married.
See, now
So
let's be honest. There is an uncomfortable truth to that side because a lot of people, it's a very debatable question, would say men and women can be friends. And there would be some who says, yes, they can be friends. But sometimes people keep these friends not because they're innocent or they truly value healthy friendships, but because they just like having a emotional backup. Now, if you're keeping a friend for that very reason, now that's wrong. That's unethical. That's wrong. You're already set yourself up for failure.
and see, and I don't get that. Like, I've never been one to have that safety net. Like, you guys know, my last relationship, I went all in, right? There was no safety net. I didn't hold on to another apartment, a home. I went all in. I can't even imagine having a person as a safety net.
Yeah.
Just in case this doesn't work out, I'm going to go ahead and be with that guy. Unless maybe you had some agreement, like if we're not married by 50, we're going to go ahead and marry each other. But that's different. I couldn't imagine that, like having a partner as a safety net. But you're right, it does happen. So you keep that person close. It's very interesting.
It is
You know,
very unethical.
it absolutely is. And then we go, why even get married?
Why?
Why even get married if you can't commit and you're jumping from wife to wife or relationship to relationship? Like at some point, you ought to recognize that some boundaries.
Shannon, you remember at the dinner last week, we came up with the questionnaire, right?
Yes.
So when you let yourself be vulnerable and you discuss those questions very honestly and openly with your guards off, I guess you're communicating effectively and trying to bring to the table what are you bringing to this relationship? What is the other person bringing to the relationship? And how you can have healthy boundaries, not just around friendships. It could also be family. Some people just constantly like talking to their parents or siblings. Now, that can also create an issue, right?
Too
So
much family
that's when,
involvement. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's wrong. But, if you have issues within the relationship and you outsource um, inconvenient conversations and you outsource it to with friends and all, you've set yourself up for failure right there. So rather than fixing it, now you're looking for a validation outside, whether it's with a male friend, female friends, or anyone else. So
And
as long as you can have very defined structure and boundaries, and the do's and don'ts of friendship, I think it's doable. But you have to be honest. You have to own your mistakes. You should know how to communicate. And if sometimes your needs are not if your needs are not met, don't look for a replacement outside. Talk to your partner. What happens in your bedroom or with your partners stays in the bedroom. You don't take it outside of that bedroom, right? With your friends, you in sometimes you can converse. You can you know we all do that. We sometimes bitch about our parents, about our kids, about our boss, everything, but that's very generic. But if you're going into the nitty gritty and more deeper level, now that's a problem.
with somebody of the opposite sex. Yes.
Yes,
Because
you
I've shared
need.
things with you guys, and I shared things with another female friend of mine, and she was disrespectful to my husband. So I had to cut her off because you don't need that negativity and you don't need anybody who's going to pull you out of your relationship. And I like that you mentioned those questions. So for people who are joining us, here's a list of questions that we came up with to ask on a first date. And there are 23 questions, but these are grown people questions, right? So I did ask, and I'm just going to tell you a couple on, and I know we're kind of getting away from this, but this is these are questions that I think are really important to ask. The best friend question, your female connections. A question was, what is your credit score? What is your debt? What is your relationship with your ex? So those are some questions that were on this list. And I just want to say that I recently asked somebody these questions. I was like, hey, can I ask these questions? And he was like, sure. And he answered them like, first question was, what's your credit score? And I got that credit score.
See, now that's effective
Talk about
communicator right
communication.
there.
I was like, do you want to know mine? He's like, no, I got questions on my own. I was like, okay. But this is also the person who has the female best friends, which I
There's
kind of
no
think
problem having a male or a female best friend as long as you know how to protect the emotional exclusivity of your relationship, whether it's with your friends, whether it's with your partner. As long as you know how to balance it, there should not be a problem because
yeah.
you know yourself, you know your core values. You're only answerable to yourself first, then to your partner or family or anyone else. So you need to build that
Yeah.
foundation first.
And honestly, my views have actually changed because when I was told that he had female best friends, I was like, okay, let's just be friends. And now I'm like, I think I can, I think it's doable because my ex had he was inappropriate with his ex with his best friend, but it's as far as conversation and stuff like that is concerned, but I think it can be doable if you bring your partner along with you. Like when he said, if I have to go somewhere and my best friend requires it of me or is requesting that of me, you're coming with me. Like, holy cow. And when you had mentioned secret conversations, leaving the room, that stuff that's just red flags. So you're right. It is the maturity. I just, I would just hope to discover that stuff prior to being married. That's why communication is so important.
You really need to have a very strong relationship with with your partner before you commit to a marriage, so that you have a very strong foundation. You promise each other, and you know how to keep those promises. You have had those difficult conversations, and you learn to communicate and navigate through it to figure out, and then just follow it through. Don't look for a replacement.
Well,
You need to figure out, you need to have such a strong relationship, I believe, with your husband, where your friendship won't threaten it.
I can tell you that if I was ever with a partner who told me I couldn't be friends with you ladies, they're clipped.
Clipped.
You're clipped. These are important relationships to me. And that's something the guy said. He was like, how long have they been in the picture? And I was talking to somebody else and he said, my female best friend, we were there for each other during a breakup. It's never been sexual, but during a very dark time. And so you get close to people who are going through trauma at the same time or something that you can relate to. So I get that. And what's great about dating is you can decide, I'm not comfortable with this relationship, or tell me more about it. And you get to pick and choose. You decide what you want your boundary to be. And so, like I said just a second ago, my views have slightly changed as long as I'm the priority, as long as I'm in the mix, in the fold. That's important. Don't leave me on the sidelines while you're doing whatever you're doing with your best friend. So, anything else? I know this is kind of a topic we really wanted to have everybody here for. And I definitely think we should do a part 2 on this. And honestly, I would love some input of a man. I would love to have a male guest and say, what are your thoughts on this? And maybe that's something we need to discuss.
A male perspective, 100%.
Yes, I would love to have a male's perspective on this. Are you okay with your wife or your girlfriend having a male best friend? Knowing how men can sometimes think. Again, the nature versus maturity.
Sometimes friends show you the true mirror of who you are. That's
Oh,
because you feel safe with them, right? So they will pinpoint things which your partner would think 50 times, should I or should I not? Because then there could be a conflict. There could be you're opening a box of worms, right? So you have friendships are important as long as you have the clarity, you have the conviction, you know how to communicate effectively, you set boundary, and you have the self-awareness. And communicate that to your partner where he feels safe. And your friends would, I have friends who would say, she always does that. You know, she's always like this. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? So they tell you your pattern, which your partner won't be able to tell you.
do you think it's more common for females to have male friends? And we're talking about people in a relationship, right? Or for males to have female friends? Did I say that right? Female
I am
males? Yeah,
not going to get into that gender fight, but I definitely know for sure men get physically attracted to a woman first than a woman does.
I agree.
Women needs to feel emotionally secure and safe to get attracted to men physically, whereas men first physically get attracted and the other layers come later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Like
All
I was
right.
just talking about my friend, when I made that joke before we started, when he got married, and I'm not going to name him here, because he and I have been friends for 20 years, and he's a Black American. And when he got married, his wife knew about our friendship, and I went out for a coffee with her, and she mentioned that she was a little insecure because she says, oh, you are young, you're pretty, and you know so much about him. But then slowly by slowly I built that trust with her. I would always say, if you're coming both of you coming as a package, you're not coming alone. So when you make the other women part of the conversations, you're honest, you're authentic, and you're setting boundaries, then the friendship is not a problem. And now we've been friends for that long. If I am not able to get hold of him, I call his wife.
That's very mature
And
of
that's
you.
because you're respectful. Like that's a very respectful mindset that you have there. But unfortunately, that's not a mindset that a lot of people have. A lot of people are not mature enough in themselves and have ill some people have ill thoughts, ill will towards situations. And so it's hard it doesn't have to do with being insecure. Some people are just ill will.
And like you said earlier, letting the enemy in.
Yeah.
There are some people who just they want your husband, boyfriend's attention. They want your wife, your girlfriend, their
Hmm.
attention. They want that. And so I know for me, when I'm in a relationship, I'm 100% locked in. And if I decide to give somebody my attention and even beyond that, my heart, I know this is going to sound so cliche, right? I'm really not even attracted to other men. And I don't know if you guys can understand that, but I can see somebody who looks good, but I'm not attracted to them
That's
I
because
because
can
you have
I can
clarity
agree
and
with that.
boundary setting. That's where,
yeah,
those things come in play. That, as a human, you can get attracted to anyone, but that doesn't mean you're going to pursue that feeling.
that's
You
where
don't.
that physicalness can come in.
Self-control, self-awareness, that's where all that come in the picture.
Right. All right, ladies. Well, thank you for talking briefly about this topic. I can't wait till all the girls get on so that way we can have a more in-depth conversation. We have 4 women in this tribe that are married and 2 that are single. And so it's nice to have everybody on board to talk about this subject. So, all right, with that being said,
Stay
you know what I
tuned
say.
for Stay tuned for part 2.
New. Stay tuned for part 2, and maybe we can get some men to join in the conversation. So happy Sunday. You guys have a great night, and like, share, subscribe, leave us a comment. Adios.